Hey, what's up, guys? This is your boy MW. It's Chico TC. But welcome back to the channel. And today we're gonna be talking about disassociating from emotions and emotional ideas. So yeah, let's get into it. And before we do, it's useful to look at the previous videos I've put out, because at least the ones in the I can't remember the name of the playlist. I think it's called self-improvement. But the ones in the self-improvement playlist, these ideas build off of each other. They'll kind of tic-tac or ping-pong off of each other. So if you're ever confused about a topic and you feel like I don't mention enough about it in one particular video, then go ahead and check that playlist out. So emotions, right? So disassociating from emotions and emotional ideas, right? Emotions are tied to an idea that you're reacting to. And I have that as my first bullet point because sometimes, maybe all of the times, I have to do the research on this, but just based off anecdotal evidence and there's research out there, I just haven't done it. Or at least I've come across it, but I'm not pulling any sources. But you can do this yourself. You can ask anybody else. It's just a natural thing. When you think of ice cream, what do you feel? When you think of love, when you think of a person you love, what do you feel? When you think of a person you dislike, what do you feel? When you think of anything you dislike, what do you feel? What thoughts come up that makes you feel insecure? What thoughts come up that make you feel anxious? So this notion that I'm posing, that emotions are tied to an idea and that you're reacting to that, completely true. So the point of today's video is to learn how to disassociate from that emotion in response to the idea that reoccurs, right? For say you're having an emotion that you just don't like the way you feel when something pops up. It might be an image, it might be a word, it might be just a connotation, whatever it is, anything. And there's a particular emotion that you don't like that pops up. This teaches you how to disassociate from that emotion. And disassociation really is the first part of creating, in a sense. You've heard I think this is an age-old thing. If you've ever been into psychology or if you've ever been in therapy, whatever, if you looked into the psychology of things, the first step to ever moving past something is to acknowledge that it's there. And once you've done that, you're sort of opened up the internal world around that topic or around that thing, to be able to take the next steps to move past it, right? Because if you don't move past it, it's always going to be there, right? If you don't even acknowledge it, it's always going to be there. So here's the thing, right? First things to do is to recognize the emotion you are feeling when anything that triggers that idea pops up, right? The idea comes, and you should recognize the emotion that's attached to the idea, right? Somebody calls you fat, right? Or something like that. If you're big or heavy set or whatever, even if you're not, and you just feel a way of doing that, if you just feel a way because that idea came to your head, somebody told you that, and that idea came to your head, and now you're feeling a way, right? I want you to sit in that emotional state while thinking, right? Don't just try to push the emotion away. Don't try to search for something to cure or numb or whatever. I want you to sit in that emotion while thinking. Now, you'll notice that the emotion doesn't just stop, right? Think about it. You'll notice the emotion doesn't just stop. Even if you've moved on to another topic, another idea, that emotion still lingers. And so essentially, you are bringing the emotional state from one idea into the next idea. And if you do that a lot, if that pathway is created, for say there's a habit of thought that you've created yourself, like you think about this thing first, then you automatically think of the next thing, then you automatically think of the next thing, and all of that in that sequence, in that train of thought, then you've essentially tied those sequences of thought to that one emotion, as far as that emotion goes, you know? So you'll notice that, like, if you do this experiment where you sit with the emotion, and like next time you feel the emotion, you sit with it while you're thinking and you monitor what you're thinking. You just take the time and the patience to see what's happening in your brain, see what's happening in your body, the chemistry that's going on. You'll notice that you bring your emotions to the next thought. And so those thoughts, so for say, again, let's use the fat comment. Somebody calls you fat. You'll bring that emotion, however it is that you're feeling, into the next thought. I'm not fat. Oh wait. You know what? I don't even want to think about this. I want to think about something else. What's going on today? Blah 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 blah. You'll bring that emotion. Like what game is going on, right? That's what I meant to say. What game is going on? So you went from, oh, I'm not fat, I don't want to think about this. What game is going on? If you like sports or whatever, let me turn on the game or whatever. You'll bring that emotion straight through from that initial feeling of hurt, pain, anger. That'll travel through to all the way till let's see what's on the game. Let's see what can distract me, right? Until that emotional energy fizzles out. But you did travel, that emotion did take a journey through those other states of your being, through those other states of your being, through those other thoughts that tie to other parts of your life and things like that. That emotion was carried over, right? Because it had such a strong charge. So that's where the work. You first need to understand that emotions are not just tied to one idea. They can be synced across a series of ideas. And especially if those series of ideas are linked together sequentially, repetitively, you've created a neurological pathway of thinking about a certain thing, then that emotion will be chained to those ideas, and those ideas would always find homing back to each other. Those separate ideas, which were once separate, will not always find homing back to each other. They'll always automatically link back up with that emotion as the bond. That's the power, right? So, an emotionally charged idea fueled the emotional charge of the next idea unintentionally, which is what I just said. Yes, at this point, I want you to recognize how powerful that is. And yes, you are that power-filled. You're filled with power. Now, control of it will make you powerful, right? So sidebar, creating, quote unquote, creating a reality you want, right? Just know that energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be transferred, right? This is talking about what I just talked about. And in our case, intentionally or unintentionally, right? So you can intentionally create what you want to create, right? Or transmute an energy to create another thing, if we're being technical. But just for simple purposes, we'll say you're creating the reality you want, intentionally or unintentionally, right? And you want to be on the intentional side. You never want to be at the whims of anything, right? So here's where the work begins, right? You need to be patient with yourself. Again, this is super important. This sort of work is not easy to do, at least not at first, but with time, with energy, with dedication, with patience. If you're not going to be patient with yourself, who will? Who will be patient with you? If not you for yourself. So be patient with yourself. Love yourself. If no one else loves you in the world, you have to love yourself, right? So patience and love and then the emotional thought. And lovingly tell yourself that emotional thought that you. So in this case, it says end the emotional thought. I'm just looking at what I wrote down here, just jumbled a couple things down. End the emotional thought and lovingly tell yourself it. The arrangement of emotions and idea is wrong, and transfer the proper neutral or higher emotions to the idea. And you might have to do this for weeks. So here's the idea with that point, right? This talks about something else I spoke about in maybe a video or 2 videos ago. I can't really remember what that video was called, but it's in there about it talked about the idea of the range of, it's like you can view your emotional range as either a ladder or a number line, right? It's easier for me to kind of look at it both ways, but I just default to sort of like the somewhere in between. It's kind of weird, but let's just say I default to like the number line, right? Even though it's much more complicated than that in my head. It's the emotional range it's almost diagonal, if I'm being honest. But let's look at it as a number line. The negative emotions are on the negative side, and the closer you get to zero, the negative emotions are on the negative side. The positive emotions are on the positive side of the number line, which is horizontal, and the neutral emotions are the emotions on either side that is closest to zero, right? The closer you get to zero on either side are the more neutral emotions, right? And so this talks about being in that state. Once you're in that state of patience and love, you enter this realm where now you need to, where you have the freedom to transfer emotions, or do any sort of work, do any sort of thinking, do any sort of inner work, do any sort of like recollection, anything. There's just a lot of space once you've inwardly. There's a lot of space once you're patient and once you love yourself. That realm that you kind of like sit in and meditate in, there's a lot of space there. It's not as crowded with emotions coming in and out. And that's the ideal state that you want to be in to do this sort of work, right? So this work where you're lovingly telling yourself and lovingly creating the reality that you want to create, you're lovingly arranging the emotions and ideas in the way that you want to arrange them. You do this in this state by converting those previous ideas, previous emotional ideas and previous emotions into neutral or higher emotions, right? Like for example, let's go back to the fat comment. Somebody walks up to you, points you in your nose and say, "Hey, look, you're fat." And you're really hurt. So here's what you would ideally do if you want to change this. Change your feelings about it, change something. You would find a quiet place, or you can do it there if you're that advanced, but you can find a quiet place. You sit down, be comfortable, right? As comfortable as you can get. You don't need to be laying down or anything like that if that's not what you want to do. Just as comfortable as you want to get to where you can talk to yourself peacefully. You be patient with yourself to be able to sift through the thoughts that are coming through, whatever, but you have to focus on the goal. Like, I really want to have this conversation with myself about being fat. That's your goal. But while you're sitting there, while you're getting comfortable, more thoughts might come in, but you're patient. Be patient and say, look, I know these are coming in, but this is the goal. I really want to have this talk with myself. And you lovingly do this. You lovingly be patient with yourself. You don't blame yourself. You don't get upset that more thoughts are coming in, or that you feel this way or that way, etc. You lovingly be patient with yourself. And then once you're in that space, then now there's not as much chaos going on in your head, etc. There's a lot more space for you to pull in that idea of somebody calling you fat, of being fat or whatever, and dissecting it. Now you have the space. You have created this lab table internally where you have these tools that you can cut this thing apart and Now, you know, you can cut it apart and convert parts of it, parts bit by bit, if you want to take it the whole at a time, depending on how big this emotional thing is to you, depending on how big the feeling is to you. Sometimes feelings could be lighter than other feelings, right? Somebody could say something that does bother you, but it doesn't bother you as much as one other thing might do. So that thing that doesn't bother you as much as the other thing might be a lighter emotion for you. And you won't really need to cut it down piece by piece. You can automatically transmute the feeling, the negative emotion that you have attached to this idea, and transmute into something positive, like, oh hey, I'm not fat, but I do want to get healthy. Or I am fat, I should do something better. Or this person doesn't know what they're talking about, but you know what, I still love this. And it's just, you just find ways to transmute the negative emotion into something neutral or higher. You never want an emotion to be on a negative end, because it does you no good and it does the world no good, right? Especially you come first, and it does you no good. And because it does you no good, it does the world no good. But once it does you good in a way that aligns with the universe, in a way that aligns with energy, right? It's important to stress this. Don't misconstrue what I'm saying. There's nothing better than love. Love is the answer, right? So anything you could get from neutral to the more positive emotions leaning towards love will be the best thing for you, and the best thing for your health, for your longevity, for your vitality, for your vigor, and for the world, right? So yeah, so it comes to that idea, right? You are the architect. You've created this lab on the inside where we can take apart an emotional idea and transmute it, a negatively charged emotional idea, and transmute it to something more neutral, and something much more either neutral or positive, right? Just to give you an example, a quick example, so that we can, just another example. Have you ever had a word or a name on the tip of your tongue and you just weren't recalling it? When you did that, what did you do? Right? What did you do? Especially as a kid, if you watch kids, like, and they're really trying to find, like, they're really trying to think of something that's on the tip of their tongue. What do? They slow down. They really stay silent. They think in silence, and they focus on that. They make room in their head to search. Everything else goes out the window. Everything else stops. They stay still. They're silent. They're just in the zone internally, looking, searching for whatever it is, right? It's in that silencing that you sink past all of the surface level feelings and all of the bullshit, and fall into the mostly empty space to do the work, to find that word or name, right? That is the same space. That is the canvas. That is the lab table. And to get there, you have to be patient. You have to have a lot of patience with yourself and whatever feelings arise, right? If something comes up, be patient with yourself. Go back to the goal. In this case, just for this example, you're trying to find that word or a name, Or in the case of this video, you're disassociating. You're disassociating, and then you're creating, right? This is your boy. This has been me. Peace.